The guitar exercises I'm about to show you completely transformed my guitar playing, and as such, I could say it changed my life. I think it'll do the same for you if you'll take the time to stick around and watch this video. You know, as guitarists, in the course of our musical journey, we try an endless array of exercises in hopes of developing our technique and really unlocking the fretboard. But it's been my experience through decades of playing, studying, practicing, and teaching that there's only been a handful of exercises that I've tried that have really resulted in a massive leap forward. What I could call a true transformation in my understanding of the guitar neck, or a massive leap forward in my technique or skills. Or in the case of the very best exercises, both of those things happening at the same time. Find yourself having multiple aha moments. Grab your guitar, maybe your favorite beverage, and let's get into this transformative arpeggio workout. The origin of this lesson for me kind of goes back to the time when shredders ruled the world and there was so much exciting guitar playing happening. I had decided to buckle down and really get my chops together after taking a bit of a hiatus from the guitar. My teacher at the time was all too happy to bury me in technique exercises. Lots and lots of scales and modes and lots of arpeggios. And I found myself really loving the sound of seventh arpeggios. Because of the spaces between the notes, they sound really open and airy, and to me they sound much prettier than scales. Yet there's still enough note density to allow you to play shapes where you can get some decent speed going. So let's do a quick theory review of seventh arpeggios. There are 5 types of seventh arpeggios. Today we're going to be concentrating on major seventh arpeggios because I don't want this video to be 3 hours long. Here's the E major scale on one string, the low E string. We got the notes E, F sharp, G sharp, A, B, C sharp, D sharp, and we're back to E up an octave. Now we can and should also see these notes as the root, the second, the major third, the fourth, the fifth, the sixth, the major seventh, and the octave. So where do arpeggios come from? Well, we build them by putting together every other note in the scale. 3-note arpeggios are called triads. If we take 3 notes, we take the root or E in the key of E, the major third or G sharp, and the fifth or B, we get an E major triad. And we can find shapes to play major triads all over the neck. For instance, if I go to this E at the 7th fret of the A string, I can play it on 3 strings, root, third, fifth. I could play it starting with my middle finger on the root, third and fifth on just the A string. If I go to my index finger, I can play the root and the major third on the A string and the fifth on the D string. So there's 3 different arpeggio shapes, 1 note. Now, if we want more color to the sound, we can add the major 7th interval to the mix and we get a 4-note arpeggio with the intervals, the 1, the major third, the 5th, and the major 7th. And likewise, we can find these arpeggios all over the neck. And here's something really awesome. We don't have to play them starting on the root only. We can start on one of the other notes and play through that arpeggio also. And that gives us a little different tonality, but it also lets us start the arpeggios in different spots on the fretboard. Now, if we do start on the root and we play the intervals, the root, the third, the fifth, and the 7th, we call this the root form of a major 7 arpeggio. If we move to the major third and we play the major third, the 5th, the 7th, and the root, we call this the first inversion because we've inverted the order of the notes we played. We could start on the B or the fifth and play 5, 7, root, major third. This is what we call the second inversion of E major 7. And lastly, we can start on the D sharp or the major 7 and we play 7, root, the third, and the fifth. And we call this the third inversion. So this gives us the root form and 3 inversions. And you can already see how just playing the root form and those inversions moves us almost all the way up the guitar neck. Now I hope you're with me so far because things are about to get really fun. Let's build out each inversion from a 4-note shape to a shape that spans across all 6 strings. And then we're going to use those shapes to play this killer crazy exercise that I promised you. So let's start with the root form of E major 7 up at the 12th fret. And our shape looks like this. We've got root and major third on the low E, the 5th on the A string, the major 7th and the root on the D string, the major 3rd and the 5th on the G string, the major 7th on the B string, and then the root and the major 3rd on the high E. Now you can and you should learn to alternate pick these shapes I show you just from a technical standpoint because sometimes you want that percussive pick sound. But here's the first real bit of gold for you in this video. These shapes can be a little funky to alternate pick because some strings have 2 notes, others only have 1. And through experimentation, I stumbled on a technique. It's not only easier, but I think it sounds better. And that's a combination of sweep picking and hammer-ons and pull-offs. So what we're going to do, we're going to play first the entire shape ascending. And we're going to make one long continuous picking motion across all 6 strings. The trick is to pick the first note on each string that we come to. If there's only 1 note on that string, we go to the next string. If there's a second note on that string, when we're ascending, we're going to hammer on. So the low E, we're going to pick the root, hammer onto the major third. The A string only has the 5th. So we hit that note, we keep going. The D string, we're going to pick the major 7th and hammer onto the root. The G string, we're going to pick the major 3rd and hammer on the 5th. The B string, we're going to pick the major 7. And then the high E string, we're going to pick the root and then hammer onto the major 3rd. Descending, it's just the opposite. We're going to make an upstroke to play the major 3rd on the high E and pull off to the root. We've only got the major 7th on the B string, so we hit that with our upward sweep. On the G string, we pick the 5th and pull off to the major 3rd. The D string, we pick the root and pull off to the major 7. And we've only got the 5th on the A string, so that gets hit with our upstroke. And then on the low E, we're going to pick the major 3rd and pull off to the root. Now, if I wanted to play the entire arpeggio ascending and descending, I'd make one small change to the picking, and that is to alternate pick the first 2 notes I'd play on the high E, because I want to make sure to articulate both those notes, and it's going to change the picking direction, so then we can move right into our upward sweep for the ascending section. Check it out. And that would also happen on the low E if we started by descending, because again, you've got to turn around the picking to start that ascending section. So now we've got this really cool shape that allows us to play all the way across the fretboard, and the sweep picking combined with hammer-ons and pull-offs gives us a really liquid, bubbly sound that's especially appealing to my ears at least. Now let's learn 6-string shapes for the first, second, and third inversions. And then we're going to use those shapes in that exercise that I promise is going to blow your mind. So first inversion, let's play it starting at the G sharp or the major 3rd, and we're at the 4th fret of the low E string. So using that same sweep picking motion that we did for the root shape, we've got our major 3rd and 5th on the low E. We've got major 3rd and root on the A string. We've got just one note on both the D and the G strings. So we've got the major 3rd and the 5th. On the B string, we've got our major 7th and the root at frets 4 and 5. And then On the high E, we've got our major third and the fifth. Let me play through that shape a few times, ascending and descending. Okay, for the second inversion, we're going to move up to the B or the fifth of E at the 7th fret of our low E string. On the low E, we've got the fifth and the major 7th. On the A string, we've got the root and the major 3rd on the same frets as the notes on the low E string. On the D string, we just have the 5th. On the G string, we're going to play the major 7th and the root. On the B, we've got the major 3rd. And on the high E, we've got the 5th and the major 7. That shape sounds like this. Third inversion, we're going to go up to the major 7th, which is the D sharp note with the 11th fret of the low E string. So we've got major 3rd and root on the low E, the major 3rd and the 5th on the A string, the major 3rd and the root on the D, just the major 3rd on the G string, the 5th on the B string, and then major 7 and the root repeat on a high E string. With the combination of sweep picking and hammer-ons and pull-offs, the third inversion shape sounds like this. Okay, so there we have our 4 shapes. Here's an awesome way to practice these shapes that's going to get us ready for our final exercise. A little prelude, if you will. What we're going to do is we're going to practice combining these shapes seamlessly up and down the fretboard. Let's start by ascending from the first inversion at the 4th fret of the low E to the first inversion all the way up at the 16th fret of the low E. So we're going to play through that first inversion up to the 5th or the B at the 7th fret of the high E string. Now the next interval is going to be the major 7th up at the 11th fret. So we're going to slide up into that note, and then we're going to descend through the second inversion to the B or the 5th of E at the 7th fret of the low E. Now the next note from there would be the major 7th at fret 11. So we're going to shift up to that note, ascend through the third inversion up to the E or the root note at the 12th fret. Now, next note would be the major 3rd at fret 16 of the high E, and then from there, we descend to the root form. Then we're going to shift up to the major 3rd at fret 16 and play that first inversion one last time. And on this guitar, I'm going to run out of frets and I can't play any more shapes, basically. And of course, we could start up at the 16th fret and that first inversion from there and descend. And obviously, I want you to practice in both directions. All right, so far we've got 4 cool 6-string major 7th arpeggio shapes, and we've got a way of combining sweep picking with hammer-ons and pull-offs to give us a more liquidy, fluid sounding attack. Remember when I said we'd be learning multiple things at once in the intro? Well, this is what I was talking about. And now we're ready, I think, for the real mind bender. The exercise that not only opened my mind, but helped me see the fretboard so much more clearly. And here it is. We've been using the E note as the root for our E major 7th arpeggios. But the E note can also function as the major 3rd, the 5th, or the major 7th of different major 7th arpeggios. Now that might take a little explanation. E is obviously the root of E major 7. But E is also the major 3rd of C major 7. E is the 5th of A major 7. And E is the major 7th of F major 7. Now, our killer exercise, we're going to start at the E note at the 12th fret, and we're going to play each of those 4 different major 7th arpeggios back to back. So we're adding another layer to our practice. We're going to have to remember the different inversion shapes while we continuously are changing keys. And this is why this exercise is so good for your ability to play through chord changes on the fly. See, as guitarists, we tend to practice things in a single tonality like we did when we were learning those first 4 shapes. And while we need to do that in the stage that we're getting familiar with an idea, once we're familiar with that idea, we need to push ourselves to practice in a way that's more similar to we would play when we're playing solos. And that's constantly changing our ideas to fit the constantly changing chords that we play over. This exercise is perfect for that challenge, and that's why it's such a transformative exercise. We're going to play these different major 7th arpeggios starting from the same note, the E at the 12th fret of the low E string. Now, how do we attack this challenge? Well, E is the root of E, so that's an easy one. We just play our root form. E is the major 3rd of C, so if we play our first inversion shape starting with the E at the 12th fret, that's going to give us C major 7. E is the 5th of A, so to play A major 7, we have to play the second inversion shape starting with that E at the 12th fret. And lastly, E being the major 7 of F major 7, we're going to play our third inversion shape starting at the E, and we're going to nail F major 7. Now, let's run through some variations on this theme. Now, variation number 1, we're going to ascend E major 7 to the highest note, which is going to be the G sharp or major 3rd at the 16th fret of the high E string. Once we get to that note, we're going to then switch to C major 7, starting at the G at the 15th fret, and then we're going to play down again to the E at the 12th fret of the low E string. Now, once we get to that low E, we're going to ascend through A major 7, and we're going to start with the E at the 12th fret again. Then once we get to the G sharp again at the 16th fret, we're going to switch to F major 7 by playing the F note at the 13th fret of the E string and descending all the way back down to the E at the 12th fret of the low E string. Here's all 4 shapes together. Variation number 3, we're going to get a little crazy here and combine 2 different inversions of each major 7th arpeggio. This is where some of the favorite licks I've ever come up with came from, combining multiple arpeggio shapes and sliding around the fretboard. Starting with the E major 7 root form, we're going to ascend to the highest note, which is G sharp or the major 3rd. And then we're going to slide up to the 19th fret, which is B or the 5th, and we're going to descend through the first inversion shape of E major 7. We're going to drop back down to the 12th fret, and we're going to ascend through first inversion of C major 7 to the major 3rd or the G at fret 15. And from there, we're going to slide back up to that B. It's the major 7th of C, and we're going to descend to the second inversion of C major 7. Starting back to the 12th fret, we're going to ascend through the second inversion of A major 7 to the G sharp or the major 7 at fret 16. Then we're going to shift to grab the A at the 17th fret. We're going to the second finger, and we're going to descend through the third inversion shape of A major 7. Lastly, we drop back to the 12th fret, and we ascend through the third inversion of F major 7. When we get to that E at the 12th fret of the high E, we're going to shift the index finger to the root. And that's going to allow us to play the major third at the 17th fret and descend through the root form of F major 7. And then variation 4, our last variation, we're going to again combine two different arpeggio inversions. This time we're going to do the ones at the 12th fret and then the inversions below them on the fretboard. So for E major 7, we're going to have our root form and then the third inversion. For C major 7, again we have first inversion. Then we're going to go to our root form. For A major 7, we've got second inversion at the 12th fret. And then we're going to drop down to the first inversion at the 9th fret. For F major 7, we've got our third inversion, followed by second inversion at the 8th fret. So there is our awesome major 7 arpeggio workout. Of course, you should practice that in all 12 keys. You can do those same exercises with minor 7th arpeggios, dominant 7th arpeggios, and you should check out this video for a completely different take on understanding arpeggios. Good luck with your playing, work hard, have fun. I'll be seeing you soon.